All right, guys, welcome to Members Talk Live, where our members get on camera with me and we have a discussion about all types of topics. Today, we've got a full-on packed show. Sony is canceling their universe. At least that's what the reports are saying. T and I have seen Kraven the Hunter with the brave souls that went out last night. I went out a little bit too late last night. You can probably see it in my face and in my voice, but needed to see it so we could discuss it on the show. So T and I will talk a little bit about that. Haley Atwell and Chris Evans are apparently coming back to the Avengers, and I guess there was a movie that they were trying to get made with both of them back in the MCU. We'll talk about that. And the big news and the headline title of this video: Clayface, a very popular villain, especially in the last recent years. I've been hearing a lot more about him discussed in our circles. He is officially getting a DC Studios movie written by Mike Flanagan. We'll talk about all that and more. This is Members Talk Live. All right, so without wasting any time, let's get our members in here. First up, we've got the man, the Ace Avenue. What's going on, dude?
What's up, man? Way to nail those intros. You are top tier with that.
Oh, thank you very much. Sometimes I fumble it, but today I did pretty good, so I appreciate that. And speaking of someone who never fumbles it, we've got T. Have you seen that with T? How's it going, buddy?
Man, it is going great. Ace, I love the background.
Appreciate that.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful and very appropriate for what we're going to be talking about today. But before we get into our topics, guys, very quickly, tell people where they can find you. And T, let's start with you. Where can people find you?
Oh, well, you can find me at the Have You Seen That with T YouTube channel. I dropped a Gladiator 2 review a few weeks ago, and well, I'm debating. Like, do I want to go on a 15-minute rant on how great Kraven was, or
Yes,
I'm
requesting it.
You know what? I'll do it right after this stream.
I'm looking forward to that. Ace, where can they find you?
You can find me at the Ace Avenue for your sports, movies, and more. Gonna start ramping up the movie stuff. I also am gonna have to go see Kraven because I've had a couple people message me like, bro, when is your review coming out? Can't wait to see you tear this apart. I'm like, oh man.
Well, someone who couldn't be here today, but it definitely doesn't look like he's enjoying Kraven that much, is Michael Entity, a beloved channel member. What's going on, dude? Says, hey, gentlemen, sorry I couldn't join again, but I miss talking with you guys. Also, I hope I'm not in the minority for saying this, but Kraven the Hunter was worse than Madam Web. Madam Web at least had a simple story structure to follow, even if it was done poorly. Russell Crowe just walks around for his paycheck, and Paul Giamatti was a better Rhino, surprisingly.
Wow.
Oh, man.
Ooh.
T, we've seen Kraven the Hunter. Non-spoilery, of course. We were kind of talking before we went live as well about this. Non-spoilery, what were your thoughts on the grand finale to the Sony villain universe?
So, Kraven the Hunter, Aaron Taylor Johnson is a great actor. I'm going to start by saying that. And he got pretty jacked for this movie. And that's what the movie was Aaron Taylor Johnson posing, being jacked, fighting terrible CGI animals.
Oh, man, so many. So many.
And it was words were said on the screen. There were scenes in this movie that somehow were connected. I don't think they were. It was just like, it felt like a music video without music. It was just a bunch of scenes put together. Were they coherent? It depends. Depends on how much alcohol you drank before you started watching it. Like it was a mess. It really was. It was terrible dialogue. I thought the action was going to be good. The action was edited better in the trailer than it was in the actual film. And it just,
I don't disagree.
Yeah, it was not a good time. Is it worse than Madam Web? At least I got to see Sydney Sweeney during Madam Web. Like, that's the saving grace of Madam Web. I got to see Sydney Sweeney. So
I do have a very important question for you, T, though.
Yes.
Do you want to be my partner? Do you want to partner up with me?
Yes.
Yes. The Rhino. Okay, this is like a very, very, very slight spoiler. It's not even that important. The Rhino. to every single person he meets. Every single person, whether he kidnaps them, whether he runs into them in a dark alleyway. Do you want to be my partner? Do you want to partner up with me? We could be partners. He is desperate for a partner. Anyone he locks eyes with in this movie, he is asking them to partner up. It is hysterical.
So I don't know the actor's name who played the Rhino.
No, I don't either.
But he did hit. I said this, I put this out. I usually do like very quick, synopsis on my Facebook and threads. If Morbius and Madam Web had a baby, it would be Craven. Because like he did his best Matt Smith, like impersonate, because he was so hammy. And like you said, yeah, he was just the whole partner thing made absolutely no sense. But then again, none of the movie made sense.
By the way, what are they partners of? The movie doesn't tell you. Yeah,
their empire. This huge empire of we don't know what they we
very
don't know
vague
trafficking animals, drugs, people. We don't know.
They're poachers and they also they're drug lords or something. I don't know. The movie doesn't flesh anything out, and that's the biggest thing. I do akin this one more to Morbius than Madam Web, because for me, Madam Web, like every single, like from a technical aspect to the dialogue to the acting, everything was just off and wrong and done horribly. I like Darren Taylor Johnson in this. He was trying. He was giving it his best. The action, while it wasn't like mind-blowingly awesome, there was a couple things in there I quite like. That car chase that happens a little over halfway through the movie, I thought that was kind of entertaining and kind of fun. The backstory is the worst comic book origin story I've ever seen put on screen, though. Like I don't even understand the powers. I don't understand anyone. There is at least 4 people in this movie with powers, and I don't understand how any of them work, and I don't understand how they got any of them, and I don't even know like where they came from. Like there's character introductions that are missing. People just pop up in this. I think the edit was really terrible, is what I think happened with this.
Yes.
Edit is scrambled. There are scenes clearly missing. There were things that were reshot and recontextuated, but not fitting into the narrative that they're very, very poorly trying to tell. This doesn't have a story. There's no story in this. It's the biggest sin of a movie in that it's boring. It is very, very boring. And that's how I felt about Morbius as well, as it was very boring.
You guys are really selling this.
No. So I watched Double Toasted. I watched Double Toasted when they do their movie roast.
Oh, they're great.
Movie reviews. And they just go on about how you have to watch. It's so terrible. You have to watch it. If you've invested in the Sony universe to this point, if you've seen Madam Web and you've seen Morbius, you have to go see Craven. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you're anywhere in any way, shape, if you saw Venom, you got to go see Craven. You just got to complete the whatever it is of the SCU, the Sony Spider-Man list universe, whatever they want to call it. It's the worst of the best.
It's the worst of
the worst of the best, and the best is using that word so very loosely.
It's pretty much like if you started, you just got to finish it.
Yeah, you got to finish it.
You would trap.
It's like a train wreck. Yeah, it's a train wreck.
It kind of is. It's like you've come this far. You've seen so much. If you saw the 2 movies released this year, Madam Web and Venom, Last Dance, which by the way, easily, like I didn't even like that one, but that's easily the best one of the year from Sony is Last Dance. But if you saw those 2, you might as well finish it off. But if you're like, I don't know, if you've got like, children to feed or something, don't don't go out and spend and waste your time on this. Like it's not worth it. And
so does this cap off the worst superhero movie year you guys have ever seen?
100%.
See, you guys are young, man. When y'all say stuff like that, I grew up through some bad times, man. Like before Blade, it was bleak out here. Like it was like it was
okay, let's rephrase it. Since 2010, when the superhero genre became the big thing of Hollywood, when it changed the system with Avengers in 2012, is this the worst comic book year since the Avengers in 2012.
Well, I would even say 2000s when X-Men started dropping. I would say, would you
Yeah,
say
you could
it's
say
the
that.
best? Would you say it's the worst?
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. It's pretty terrible.
Thank God for Deadpool and Wolverine, guys. Thank God for Deadpool and Wolverine. All right. Well, T, last week it was your birthday, and Sony must have been watching because they gave you a gift. They gave
They
you a gift
did.
with the
Bless them.
release of Kraven the Hunter to get butts in seats. Sony has announced that this is the end of the universe. Sony has, well, actually, Sony didn't announce it, but the trades are going with it. Here's what they have to say in the Dark Horizons. Sony halts its own Marvel Universe plans. Sony's Spider-Man universe is reportedly being put on ice once J.C. Chandler's Kraven the Hunter hits cinema, reports the Wrap. The shared universe, mostly known as the Sony Pictures Universe of Marvel Characters, SPUMC. For the record, by the way, the biggest indicator of how bad this universe was is no one knows what it's called. It's called the Spider-Man Less universe, the Spider-Man Villain universe, the SSU, the SPUMC. I've never known what to call this thing. It has never had a name. Terrible branding. Before changing to the less memorable SSU, again, includes characters commonly associated with Spider-Man in the Marvel Comics. It began in 2018 with Venom and Venom Let There Be Carnage, Morbius, and then Madam Web and Venom The Last Dance. Kraven the Hunter, which opens on Friday, marks the last. While the Venom films have been commercially successful and have their defenders, Morbius and Madam Web were disasters on many levels. Several different projects were announced to be in development, but none appear to have made any progress. Their sources say that the studio is now focusing its efforts on the fourth Spider-Man film and the animated Beyond the Spider-Verse feature, as well as the Spider-Man Noir television series featuring Nicolas Cage. One key difference is all of these projects lean into, rather than away, from the web slinger's central appeal. The Aaron Taylor Johnson-led R-rated Kraven the Hunter also stars blah, 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 and Spider-Man 4 will open in 2026. Basically, they're saying that they're done, at least for a while. They're done for a while. They've developed these movies. They have no other ones in development at the moment, and they're going to put all their focus on Spider-Man. T, as someone who has just been a lover and a fanatic of this universe, of this Sony endeavor, this saga, this legacy, really, that Sony has planted in pulp culture history may never be matched again. How are you feeling knowing that these beloved characters are being put on ice and we may not see something like this from Sony for at least a little bit, and they're putting their efforts on someone like Spider-Man?
It breaks my heart. Like it really it's tearing me apart on the inside. Sony has given us so many classic moments, like a mom going into the Amazon jungle to research spiders.
Iconic.
Sony is, I mean, there was a man who got mauled by a lion, and a bit of his blood got into his blood, and he became
Something.
the world's greatest hunter.
He became something. Never tell you.
T sounds like Nick Fury trying to assemble the Avengers. Like,
Yeah.
it was a dream.
And there was a man who had this debilitating disease, and Sony cured him. Sony turned him into a living vampire. Thank you, Sony. Thank you for all the memories. Thank goodness. This was, man. So I will say this. The idea, like I've looked online, everybody's like, why do they think this will work? The idea actually makes sense because Spider-Man does have some really cool villains. We never got a Goblin, we never got a Doc Ock, we never got a Sandman or don't Electro. I mean, like, where can you really go with that? They took these obscure villains, but they didn't make them villains. Like, the one thing the Joker got right was he became kind of an anti-hero, but at his core, you knew he was a villain. Like, you knew he was psychotic. You knew all of these people, like, they wouldn't fight Spider-Man. Somehow they would team up with Spider-Man because they were all good people. Like, they all did things. Morbius did bad things because he was a vampire, but he did them to bad people. So, yeah, Spider-Man will have an issue with that. But at the end, he'd be like, "Oh, you're a good guy. Let's fight. Let's team up." Like it would end up being a team up if he ever met Morbius. Same thing with Craven. Craven is not a villain in this movie. Like, yeah, he's killing people, but they're all bad people. Like he's hunting the poachers, like which makes absolutely no sense. But yeah, and Venom. ah, like they took the best Spider-Man villain, the best non-Spider-Man anti-hero in that Spider-Man universe, and turned him into a one-note joke of a character who
Yep.
had like Tom Hardy, like him, hate him or love him. Like I was so indifferent to his character in these movies. Like Eddie Brock's whole existence was to hate Spider-Man. Like that's what made him funny in the comics was his hatred of Spider-Man drove him to do these insane things. When you lose that, what do you have? You just have him in a Venom suit, and it just didn't work. So Sony, thanks for the memories. Please never do this again. Please never try this again. Let this go. This will be something that you could tell your grandkids. Oh yeah, there was once a Craven movie. Oh, how'd that go? It sucked. After we finally see Craven's Last Hunt in 15 years because they ruined the character, and we'll finally see it. My grandkids will see Craven's Last Hunt. Like finally come show up when the sixth Spider-Man, when Andrew Garfield's nephew, who third removed, plays Spider-Man and the MCU's fifth iteration of Spider-Man.
Yeah, no. Ace, is there something that they can come back to here? I mean, T kind of hit it on the head. Like they just didn't know how to do these characters. And another example I'll add on to T is that he said the Joker. I say the Penguin, the series that just came out this year. They were able to keep that a true villain while also being a compelling character that had an engaging story that you enjoyed following, but knowing that he was always a bad guy. They did that very well in the Penguin. Sony always felt like we can't be too bad with this guy. We got to do something to make him likable, make him good before Spider-Man comes and punches him in the face. So Ace, is there anything to this that you could see them coming back to that might work if they just gave it more attention or put more effort into it? Or do you think that this is just a lost cause and they should just not put it on ice, but stop it entirely immediately?
I definitely think it's a lost cause. They should there's no salvaging this universe, because like it's one thing if like half the movies were good, or if they had some equity that they came out the gate strong, but it's just been a downhill slope. Like it feels like with every one of these movies. Venom, I was never a fan of any of these movies. The first Venom, I walked in there and I was like, what is this? And then it just seemed to get worse instead of going on an uphill route. They should just end it. Realistically, give the MCU back their properties so that way they can do it correctly, or at least do a better version of this. But it's frustrating because, like you guys, it alluded to, like some of these movies seem like they had potential, and that's what's the most frustrating. And it's even more frustrating when it's more successful on other medians. Like we've seen, Sony can be competent. Like Zach, I had asked you, what's your favorite non-Sony movie? They put out good movies before, so it's not like they're just putting out bad movies. They, some of the Spider-Man movies are really, really good. It's just these characters aren't translating well to how they're trying to portray them on the big screen. Like when you see, they should just focus on, like you had said, focus on the Into the Spider-Verse movies. That's what's frustrating. Those movies, a lot of people consider some of the best comic movies ever. When you look at Spider-Man 2, the video game, also Sony, the Spider-Man games have been really good. So why is it that they can nail those, but drop the ball so much on the movies? It kind of feels like sometimes they're trolling us when it comes to that, because we've seen them put out good product. The Toby movies, a lot of people love those. I'm a big fan of the Andrews, the Into the Spider-Verses, the video games. But this Sony Spider-Man list universe, maybe the key to it is, if it doesn't have Spider-Man in it, don't even bother.
Well, you see, I don't necessarily agree with that statement that if it doesn't have Spider-Man, it can't work. Because like we've kind of, like T and I were kind of talking about with Craven, there are nuggets there that you could see something that could have flourished into something more interesting, even just a straightforward revenge tale. It could have been something. I wonder if, because when Venom came out, it was kind of a weird anomaly kind of thing where it was a poorly made movie that people were calling, it's like a throwback to how superhero movies were in the 90s. You mean terrible? Yeah, like that. Like Batman and Robin, like it reminded me of Catwoman, like like the early 2000s and all that stuff. Like people were celebrating the fact that Venom kind of felt like a throwback to like the not so great comic book era. And I wonder, because Venom made like over $800 million. It did, because it's Venom. Like that's the biggest villain name of these villains. I mean, Madam Web's probably the least known, I would say, but Venom is the biggest one. So you kick off with the biggest one. It already has an IP. It already has built-in fans for Venom. And then they see it, and I wonder if Sony just kind of like got into their heads of like, oh, the thing that worked about Venom was that the fans loved that it was a throwback to the terrible early 2000s comic book era. So let's do that with all of these properties. But these properties don't have the name like Venom. It's like, who the heck is Madam Web? And then you make a Madam Web movie that's like a terrible early 2000s comic book movie, and it doesn't work because it doesn't have the goodwill and grace of carrying Venom and carrying the Venom name. And because there can't be a coincidence. They have to be making the movies that they made on purpose. The way, like Madam Web, Morbius, Kraven the Hunter, they all have such similarities to them in the edits, in the technical aspects, in the acting, in the dialogue. It feels it feels purposeful. Like it feels like they did it on purpose. It can't be a coincidence that they have all consistently felt this way. And I wonder if Sony just like got into that aspect of Venom too much, focused on it too much, told the directors, this is what we're going for, just make it cheesy, goofy, schlocky, like the early 2000s or whatever. And it just doesn't work. It doesn't work when you go into a character blind and then you get a badly made movie like that.
Do you guys think it could have worked if, let's say, some of these characters featured in an actual Spider-Man movie then got their own spin-offs? Do you think it would have worked more, less, or would have been the same?
With the writing, it would be the same. Like
Mhm.
the writing is atrocious in these movies. Like I think Craven is a cool character. The thought of Craven having his own movie is appealing. It's intriguing to me because of the character and who's playing the character. Like Aaron Taylor Johnson brings a certain equity to the character, but the writing is so bad. Like it's like he knows it. Like you could tell. Like everybody's phoning except for the Rhino. The Rhino is like, you know what? I'm all in on this. Like he is so into the whole, like, hilariously. Then that's why I said earlier, like it reminds me of Matt Smith in Morbius. Like
Yeah.
he's all in. He goes all in on the character. And that's what truly makes this movie not the worst movie. Terrible character, by the way, but his portrayal, like, it's just funny. Like you said, like, do you want to be my partner? It's like, what are you talking about? Like he's talking to his brother. It's like, do you want to be my partner? What? Like,
Yeah.
why? Like, why would that even pop in your head? Like, but it's the writing. There's another team up in the movie that literally makes no sense at all, like none whatsoever. And it's like, why would this character do that?
Yeah.
And all movies don't have to be super smart. I'm all for mindless action, but the action was bad too. So it was like, they really didn't try. Like you said, Zach, I think they were trolling us. Like I really felt like they were playing, like the first few lines of the movie. I was like, yo, they did it again. These guys are really messing. Like it's purposefully done to see. I don't know if they're trying to see if they could do it. Like, or like, man,
It has to be.
thank goodness it's over.
And it has to be Sony. It has to be them, because the director of this movie was begging people to come out and see this. This isn't like the other movies, guys. This is our movie. We made something independently ours. Go see it. If I was
He's
him,
a
I'd be
liar.
begging people not to see this. I'd be
Yeah.
begging Sony to bury this. This is an
He-
embarrassment on his record. This is what
Man.
he will be remembered for. Like the way that Joel Schumacher, who's a good director in our circles, is mostly clowned on and remembered for Batman and Robin. This guy's remembered for Kraven the Hunter now. Like that's how it's going to be. So it has to be. Yeah, it something else was going on. They realized it wasn't working, and now they've decided, you know what? Let's stop with that, and let's just move on to Spider-Man stuff. And thank goodness, I'm with T on
Yeah.
that. I will not. I'll miss the conversations of roasting this and
And
the
the
fun
jokes
of
at their expense. We've had a lot
Yeah.
of Madam Web jokes this year.
yeah, exactly. Like for that, I'm very thankful this universe existed because T, you giving us some good comedic moments on this show because of it.
Yeah.
But
And it's
Yeah.
it's also frustrating. Like I said, I agree with Zach. It's definitely Sony because we've seen 3 out of these 4 actors in other superhero properties, and they've been fine. So you know, Tom Hardy as Bane.
Bane. Yeah.
We've seen Aaron Taylor Johnson as Quicksilver, even though that was really brief. You know, he was good in that. Jared Leto as Joker. I actually thought it was, it wasn't as bad as what other people say. So definitely think it's got to be Sony in the writing because we've seen these actors have success other places.
Yeah.
For sure. Like I
100%.
really think the producers was like, hey, take this weekend, give me a script by Monday, and we'll start shooting on Tuesday. Because we gotta churn this out. Oh man, do you care? Do you care what it like? Here's my first treatment. All right, let's go with it. And just
Yeah.
like no, there's no other thought process. There wasn't 2 people in the room. It was like one person writing this, and that person was probably like, I don't know, doing Molly during the week. Like the script is so bad. Like it is atrocious.
Yeah.
The writing and like how nonsensical. Like, and you think about all the movies, they're all just nonsensical. Like nothing makes any sense whatsoever. And here we are. Just
And it
talking.
baffles me with Kraven that thing was supposed to come out September 2023. They've had like over a year to do something with it, and this is what we get. It's ridiculous. Anyway, guys, RIP, as the background of Ace's background there says, RIP the Sony Spider-Man villain universe. We hardly knew you.
We will remember you fondly.
Yeah.
All right. With that, guys, let's move on and let's talk about this. Because ever since, I would say since Matt Reeves' Batman movie came out, one villain name for Batman that keeps popping up in this circle in my chat, asking me if I want to see this, is Clayface. I don't know much about Clayface. In preparation for this, I watched the episode that features Clayface's origin on the Batman animated series, just to kind of get a glimpse as to what this could be, because fans' dreams are definitely coming true today, as it was confirmed by James Gunn. It was reported a couple days ago, but it's officially confirmed by James Gunn himself that DC Studios has greenlit a Clayface movie. This comes to us from Deadline. It says signs that Warner Brothers DC Studios is very serious about its standalone Clayface movie, even though it doesn't have a director or star yet. The studio is giving the movie, written by Mike Flanagan, a September 11th, 2026 theatrical release. That's the famed post-Labor Day gold mine weekend for Warner Brothers, with such movies as It, The Nun, and Beetlejuice franchises. Producing is DC co-bosses James Gunn and Peter Safran, as well as the Batman filmmaker Matt Reeves and Lynn Harris. Dr. Sleep filmmaker Flanagan is reportedly conceiving Clayface as a horror thriller tragedy. He won't be painted as a villain, which has been his reputation notoriously, a villain to Batman. Clayface got his DC introduction as part of Detective Comics number 40 in June of 1940. The original Clayface was a moderately successful actor who adopted the identity of a character he portrayed in a horror pick after turning to crime. Clayface has a body seemingly made out of clay and has appeared over the years in various films, television series, animated works, video games, and other forms of media. Also hitting the schedule is DC Studios and Warner Brothers Pictures Animation's original project, Dynamic Duo, in IMAX, which we first told you about. Deadline says it's the origin story of Robin. The movie's directed by Arthur. Blah 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 blah. The other studios, other DC studio holds on calendar include May 29th, 2026 for an untitled movie, June 26th, 2026 for Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, October 2nd, 2026 for The Batman 2, and March 5th, 2027 for an untitled movie. So lots of stuff there with the slate for DC kind of being announced for the next couple years, which nowhere in there is anything Gods and Monsters related. But this is going to make a lot of people happy. And this is a very interesting direction for DC Studios to go because, like normies like me, who up until, an hour ago, I knew nothing about Clayface until I watched that Batman animated series episode. But what I like about this story is it doesn't say it in this article, but I was reading it somewhere else. They're only giving this thing like maybe a $40 million budget. Like, this is not going to be a $200 million. We need to make $600 million just to break even on this unknown character, this unknown villain origin story that no one's heard about, Clayface. They're keeping it moderate. They've got a great writer here with Mike Flanagan. I love Mike Flanagan. The one that I'm most known for, or the one that I know the most about from Mike Flanagan, is The Haunting of Hill House, which was a miniseries on Netflix that I adored. I thought it was done so well. So this is a great talent to get in here writing this. It sounds like it. What I get from that description is a body horror, which you can do low budget. And I'm hoping, I've seen some images of Clayface. It might be a little bit difficult, but I'm hoping we can get like some practical effects, like Jeff Goldblum's The Fly or something in there for this Clayface. But I'm going to throw it to you, Ace, because I'm pretty sure you'll have the most knowledge about this. Clayface, what do you know about him? What's your experience with him? And how do you feel about him getting his own movie?
Well, I've been clamoring for this for a while. I've said this a couple times in here and your Wednesday shows where I'm like, I would love to see Clayface on the live action, mostly because I feel like we're in a day and age where you can make it look real. I might have to walk that back after seeing the Rhino pictures in Craven, especially with a lower budget. But I want to see characters that we haven't really seen, because the thing with DC is I'm tired of just seeing the Jokers over and over again. I want to see new, fresh characters. And with this character, like I said, much to how you saw it about an hour ago, I grew up on Batman animated series. So that's how I was really introduced to his character. Shape-shifting, regenerative, can make weapons out of himself, like a real tragic type character. I'm all for this, and I hope that it's portrayed well on the screen. A little risky, $40 million budget, like you said. It's got to be a lot of CGI. I don't know how they'd be able to nail the practical effects of it. I think it would have to be a lot of motion capture to really be able to do it. Because he's a big hulking character. You know what I'm saying? He's not, I don't want to see just some guy in mud and, clay. I want to see, because he has the ability. If you started off like that, great. But he has the ability to get bigger and bigger. And he's a big Batman antagonist. So I really want to see him on the big screen. I'm glad they're going this route.
T, do you know anything about Clayface? How do you feel about this movie?
So the Clayface origin story on Batman the Animated Series is probably top 3 episodes of that entire series. It's tragic. It's such a somber, dark episode. I think it's like 2 episodes. Might be even 2 or 3 episodes.
Feet of Clay.
It is such a great story. Like, seeing that on the big screen would be really cool. I don't think that they're going to go that route. They're going to try to do something different. Mike Flanagan's talking about horror, talking about all these things. We just talked about Sony making these movies. And this is my issue. Everybody wanted to see Clayface, but they wanted to see Clayface go against Batman. They wanted him to be a Batman villain. Let's not do this, guys. And once you said $40 million budget, let's not do this.
Allegedly, I read that somewhere else. Allegedly, that's what they're going for.
Here's how Clayface looks with the $40 million budget. He looks like Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible, taking off people's. He's like, they're doing a bunch of like face changes. He's gonna walk around turning into different people. And if he becomes the hulking person that Clayface is, it's gonna look like a big pile of poo. I don't want to say like $40 million don't get you a good Clayface. And who is he fighting? Like, and if he's not a villain, then why do I care about this character in his own movie? Like, and if he's in Gotham City, or if he's in any other city, why do I care? If he's not fighting Dick Grayson or Batman, like that would be really cool if Nightwing was like, oh my God, that would sell me on this movie. If it so happened he ends up getting on the wrong side of Nightwing and Bloodhaven or something, like just because we've never seen a Nightwing on the screen. But like he doesn't hold up by himself. Morbius
That's true.
didn't hold up by himself. Like,
Mm.
why do I care that I'm seeing a Clayface movie? You could name it anything else, just like the Joker. Like there are a lot of people who love the Joker, but that character is totally different. And that character is popular for the wrong reasons, in my opinion. Like, and I just don't think Clayface holds that same appeal. They'll put out the movie, and the movie might be great because I love Doctor Sleep. If you've like Doctor Sleep is a great sequel to The Shining, which is a classic. Doctor Sleep is so underrated. I thought it was a great movie, but nobody went and saw it. Like nobody saw Doctor Sleep in the theater. Like I didn't go see it in the theater. I watched it on HBO Max. I just let's get Clayface in the Batman 2 or the Batman 3. Let's not do a Clayface origin story. And it might be great, but I don't think it's gonna do for DC what they think it's gonna do.
Let me throw this out to you real quick. Because I hear all your points, and I get where you're coming from. For me, yes, we did just talk about Sony. We also talked about how it felt like Sony on purpose was making pretty mediocre bad movies. Going to DC Studios, my only experience with this so far with their villains is the Penguin, and the Penguin was fantastic. So they have a lot of goodwill with me with the Penguin of how they can tell villain origin stories or villain solo stories. Even the Joker was before James Gunn. It was Todd Phillips. It was its own thing. It wasn't this creative team with Matt Reeves being in here and all that kind of stuff. I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong about this, Matt Reeves is producing it, but I'm pretty sure this is set for the DCU. I'm pretty sure that James Gunn said that this will be in the DCU. I may have to double check that, but let's just say, for argument's sake, that this is in the DCU. What I think could be the brilliance of this is you do this low budget, grimy, raw horror movie with Clayface for like $40 million, $50 million, and you keep it kind of low budget, shapeshifter. You have the gross effects of a face like turning into clay and falling in and on itself, and you save the big hulking Clayface monstrosity that you need to create for the $200 million Batman movie. So you start him off in this little 40 million budget, you tell his story, you get more with the character, and then because it's DCU and it connects, when he enters Batman and you have the budget for it, then he's the big hulking monstrosity that takes on Batman. Do you think that could work, T?
I mean, it could. That sounds like the guy in Sony selling us on it. Like that's what the guy was pitching. Like he pitched, if we get Madam Web and she grows these three, like no, I
fair
get
point,
it.
Fair point.
I'm not. I'm just trolling right now. Like, but it's a good idea. It's probably gonna be a good movie. I just don't think it moves the needle the way DC thinks it's gonna move the needle. Yeah, there are people clamor for it. There were people clamor for a lot of movies, but are they gonna go see it?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like are they gonna go see it? Like, yeah, it could be a great origin story of Clayface, and it could lead up to the Brave and the Bold and all these other great things that DC has. But like, are people going to see this movie? I don't think Clayface sells to the modern audience. Is it going to be PG-13? If it's PG-13, do I even want to see it? Like, I don't like PG-13 horror. And I understand what Clayface is. I really like, honestly, you just give me the Batman animated series, that episode on the big screen, and I'm sold. But I don't think that's gonna sell the general audience. I think they'll make it on a micro budget, so it'll make its money back, like, which is good.
Yeah.
But it's not gonna put extra butts in the seats for whatever Batman project, Brave and the Bold, the $200 million thing, because they'll see Clayface And this whole thing of what people say of doing homework, having to see a movie before you see another movie, just might not work for some of those Batman fans, especially when the Batman 2 is going to come out and not feature him. Like
Right.
it's a lot of competing elements there that I just don't think sets this film up for success. Um, and James Gunn kept talking about Elseworlds and stuff like that. Like it's kind of confusing. Like if Clayface shows up and then he doesn't show up in the Batman 2, but then like 2 years later he shows up in Brave and the Bold, like why do I care? Like why should I go see this again? It business wise, it doesn't make much sense to me. And I could be thinking of it in a very macro or micro way, and they
Right.
think in the bigger scale because they're the people who are spending their money, but it just doesn't make sense financially to me or like entertainment wise.
Okay.
See,
Ace.
I like all of our stances on it. We all have different perspectives.
Yeah.
Me, I'm a fan of the character, so I want to see him. T's a little bit scarred by Sony, so he kind of doesn't want to go down his route again.
Yeah.
And Zach has equity in what DC has done with their villains, like Penguin, Joker, so he's more willing to see it. All of our stances are completely fine.
Yeah.
I agree and disagree both of you guys at the same time too, because I want to see Clayface on the screen, but like T said, it has to be attached to Batman in some sort of way. He's not a big, huge Batman villain. He's more of a villain that needs to be attached with a bigger villain. Like I don't want to use this example, but Spider-Man 3, how you had like Sandman and then you had Venom. He needs to be attached with somebody else, but without so much craziness. And then a villain that attaches, like comes back in reoccurring roles very, very briefly to take on Batman. Like let's say Batman is like the third act, everything's going action packed crazy, all of a sudden Clayface shows up out of nowhere. That's what happens a lot of times in the Batman animated series. He has to take him out real quick before getting to the main objective. I don't think Clayface, like I said, will sell like that. It'd be great to see him on screen, especially with modern technology, but it has to be done right. Attach it to the Batman in some way, shape, or form. Constantly bring him back, like Zach was saying. If you want to attach him to Batman, have him a little more grounded, but I don't want him looking like Swamp Thing, you know what I'm saying? Like anything like that. But then as he gets back, as he continues to come back, then you make him a little bit bigger, bulkier, and allow his abilities to really be fleshed out. Like I think that'd be a great side character. Some of these superhero movies have a problem with returning characters. We don't often see them. We've seen what? Throughout all of comics, we've seen Loki come back a lot. That was it. Bucky showed up a lot, but we don't see reoccurring antagonists often come back too much. Well, Magneto, stuff like that. So
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you where I think business wise this could be really, really brilliant is if they commit to this, if they commit to the horror genre, if they commit to, yes, the comic book fans who already know Clayface, but really push for those horror fans, because horror at the box office, even when it's a terrible horror film, they make bank. They can make hundreds of millions of dollars. So keep the budget low, keep it at like that, like that article was saying, 40 million, 50 million range, whatever. Keep it really low. Get Mike Flanagan, get a horror director name in there, like maybe Scott Derrickson, or who just did The Substance. If you announce the director of who just did The Substance comes in there, the horror community hears that, they get intrigued. You put out a killer trailer that leans into the horror. You sell this as an actual horror film. The horror audience is huge. And if you do this, again, 40 million, you don't have to make 200, 300, 400 million dollars to break even or make a profit. You just need those horror fans to come in here, as well as the comic book movie fans as well. If they can seriously commit to that, and DC is already established, they're willing to do R-rated. They're not like the MCU. This isn't a family 4-quadrant built-in universe. This is going to be pockets for a lot of different interests and a lot of different demographics. So if you can push that R rating or whatever, push that horror, really lean into the horror fans and get them to come out, I think this could be a smash. I really do. I think that this could be a really, really bold, innovative comic book movie and a good move for DC. I'm looking forward. I'm excited to see where it goes. Honestly, yeah, Ace.
No, I was saying, since it was so low budget too, if you attach the big name to it, like Sam Raimi too, He's a good guy that could do
Yeah.
horror as well. That would have put some attention, even though, you know, he didn't have much equity with the Multiverse of Madness, but still, his track record could have put butts in seats.
But again, even with Multiverse of Madness, which is a movie I like, that's Marvel. That's PG-13. You kind of you hold Sam Raimi back. You handcuff him a bit when you put him in a Marvel PG-13. Kevin Feige, here's what you need to do. Here you need to have this villain. You need Wanda in here. You need to connect to this. If this is just Mike Flanagan, hey, we want you to write a dope killer Clayface horror film. And then we'll look for horror directors and we'll make this thing like, and then maybe he can play with Batman later on or something. Like, there is something really interesting to this project. And even though I don't know much about Clayface, I'm really intrigued by this. I really am.
Yeah. Here's the thing too. Like, even if you want to do something so brief, like the accident that makes him Clayface, even if it was involved around Batman, I think that would make sense. That way, now he has a vendetta against Batman. You know what I'm saying? Like, make it make sense. You know what I'm saying? Like that. I'd buy into that. I really would. And I'd be all for that one.
I think the difference between this and the Sony universe too is DC has the rights to Batman. So they could literally he could just pop. He doesn't have to be, you know, a protagonist in the movie, but he could just be on the rooftop and everybody in the theater is like, oh, you know, like just a shadow of Batman, kind of like in that last episode of Peacemaker, where they have just the, you know, shadows of the people. Like that would do it, you know, that's enough. And that is the difference between Sony and DC, is they have the right to the character. So like I was saying earlier, like Robin or Nightwing could potentially show up in this movie. Anybody could show up in this movie, because especially if it's going to be in this overarching universe, you want to put somebody else in there because you want that equity of other characters. It would have to be other characters. It doesn't have to be Batman specifically, but you would have to have other DC characters in there. One that would help it push more money, just different side characters, like what's the Toy Man or something random that we haven't seen, you know, on the big screen before. But I mean, I'm intrigued. I'm gonna go see it. So I'm just a little confused, especially right after the Sony news. Like, it's like, Sony's gotta, you know, let's do a villain origin story without, you know, Batman. It's bad timing, I would say.
Yeah. That's
well, you do make a great point as far as owning the rights. So they don't have to, you know, because Marvel and Sony's biggest problem is they're fighting over rights. Like, what can we include in here? Because
they're sharing, right? They're sharing and they're both doing different things with their universes. Like, I was reading somewhere earlier this morning that Sony actually could have used Spider-Man in their villain movies if they chose to. There's got to be something in the clause in the contract or something with Marvel where they say, like, you can't connect to our universe, or you can't use Tom Holland. You'd have to use your own Spider-Man, or maybe you can't use another Spider-Man while we have Spider-Man. Like, there's got to be something in there, because why Sony wouldn't use Spider-Man when you have like that prints money? Like, throw Spider-Man into Madam Web, easily that movie makes another couple $1 million than it did at the box office, regardless of the quality. Like, I mean, you hurt the Spider-Man character brand if you put him in these movies, but they could have done it. So it's very interesting that they never did. And there's got to be something with the contract with Marvel that prevented them in some way, shape, or form from doing it. Whereas DC, it's just DC. They can share Batman all they want. They can do anything they want with Batman. No one can tell them otherwise. And that's like what T was saying. That's the advantage they have.
Look at what they did in the first Suicide Squad movie. Ezra Miller popped up real quick in a really brief cameo. Same thing with Ben Affleck. You can do that if you own the rights. So yeah, I'm all for it. Like I said, if you're gonna do the Clayface route, have him just as an innocent bystander. Batman's trying to take down somebody. He gets to an accident, blames Batman, and you go from there.
Yeah. Well, guys, questions for you. What do you guys think of this? A Clayface movie is actually being made, and a lot of you guys really wanted a Clayface something. So there you go. You got it. All right, before we head out here, we do have one more story. We got about 10 minutes, so I think we can hit the story real quick. It was announced last week that Chris Evans is returning to Avengers Doomsday, which I think for some people was a pretty no-duh kind of situation with Robert Downey Jr. coming back. It's not too surprising. And Chris Evans was just in Deadpool and Wolverine, so he's been kicking around Marvel. But something that was interesting that came out the other day is that now Haley Atwell, Peggy Carter, is also going to be returning for Avengers Doomsday. Here's what they had to say over at Dark Horizons. With Chris Evans coming back to the MCU, it seems his former on-screen flame will return with him. Actress Haley Atwell is expected to reprise her Agent Carter role in upcoming Avengers Doomsday for Marvel Studios, according to Deadline. Evans has reportedly been discussing a return in some form to the Marvel Cinematic Universe for several years, with Atwell's return also part of that plan. At one point, it was floated as a possible standalone feature. It wasn't until the story of Avengers Doomsday was sorted out that bringing back both characters became a distinct possibility. Atwell played a role across 2 Captain America films. She also had a TV series, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff we know. So, yeah, Haley Atwell and Chris Evans will both be back for Avengers. And they were trying to do a standalone movie. So, before I throw this to you, Ace, because I want to get your thoughts for sure, my first thought hearing this was Agent Carter. Even though they say Peggy Carter's coming back, Multiverse, Secret Wars, my first thought is, oh, they're pulling in Agent Carter. The thing that made that, or Captain Carter, I guess is who I'm talking about, Captain Carter, where she was the Captain America version, basically. What's interesting about that is that they tried to develop a standalone series or a standalone movie with them, but couldn't crack it. And I'm wondering if that was supposed to take place in like the 1950s or 40s when he traveled back to be with her at the end of Endgame. So that was going to take place in that time period. So I wonder now if they are going to pull from the timeline, pull a younger Peggy, pull a younger Chris Evans or a younger Steve into present day, which is something I don't want to see them do. But Ace, what do you think of this? The fact that she was already trying to get into a standalone film with Chris Evans, but now they've just pivoted over and they've put him into the Avengers. What do you think this means for her role and Chris Evans' role in Avengers Doomsday?
She'll probably more or less be a cameo appearance when it comes to Avengers Doomsday. Agent Carter, we've seen it a couple times already. Then we saw it in What If. So it's like, we saw it in Multiverse of Madness.
Which she died in.
Yeah, that was her last. Yeah, that was. I could do this all day, and then literally died. She says, obviously,
couldn't do it for 5 minutes.
Yeah, so I think that's more or less why they pulled away from a standalone. The Agent Carter's the TV show, is that even canon? Is that considered canon?
I mean, I guess
it's loose.
Yeah.
Like it was made at the time when the TV division was run by someone else, and Kevin Feige and him had a feud.
It's like the first Daredevil.
Yeah. So they mentioned stuff that happens in the movies, but the movie never addresses them. Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, I love their chemistry together. But I do feel like both of their stories were definitely closed off right in Endgame. Would I like to see it back on screen? Yeah, as a cameo appearance, because, anything's going to go in Doomsday. You're going to have variants going around left and right, stuff like that. Would love to see her pop up very briefly. Don't think it needs to stand alone. Would love to see them come back. I don't know. Maybe they come back as evil versions like we were talking about on your Wednesday show, Zach. Maybe we get to see some evil former Avengers pop up real quick and, all mayhem just breaks loose. But, I could take it or leave it. As long as it's executed properly, that's all I care about.
T, how do you feel about this? Chris Evans and Haley Atwell are both going to be in Avengers. Do you see this as a time travel thing, a multiverse thing? How do you think they're going to play into the story?
Oh, it's for sure going to be a multiversal thing, like leading up to Secret Wars. I'm all for it. I'm a big fan of Captain Carter. I love the What If. Like I liked her in What If. I think that she embodied everything Steve embodied, which I really like the Captain America character in the MCU. So seeing them on screen, like I would love to see both of them in a suit, like having a fight with somebody. That would be awesome. However they do it, I feel like I don't think they're gonna do time travel again. I hope they don't do time travel thing. I think it's gonna be some multiversal thing because I mean the Fantastic Four live in a different universe, so like there are so many ways of doing it. There's so many variants of all of these heroes. So seeing Steve Rogers again was never out of play. I kind of expected that to happen. And I expected Peggy Carter to show back up. She's a beloved character. Would I've loved to see a standalone movie? Yes. Like I just like those two characters. I think yes, they were the ending of Endgame was just perfect. It was the perfect ending to their story. But I mean, who's not gonna want to see Captain America? like I would love to see Chris Evans, go back around kicking people's ass. But hey, man, Anthony Mackie, we're here. We're here.
Oh yeah, come February.
But I mean, like I would have liked to see that story. I would love to see just Chris Evans doing Captain America type stuff because he's just great at that role. And I think Haley Atwell is just. I mean, I'd watch Haley Atwell at any point in time. Just
Yeah,
we know what you're trying to say.
Yeah, just doing whatever. So yeah, there's that. And I mean, like Doomsday is gonna have everybody in it. Like Doomsday's budget is gonna be like $500 million because it's gonna have everybody in it. Like anybody you could think of who's been in any type of Marvel property will be in Doomsday and Secret Wars. So like whoever you could think of, just know that they're gonna show back up in that movie. Blade, like everybody's gonna show up in these movies. So announcing people isn't surprising. Shouldn't be surprising.
Little bit of a tangent, but you kind of touched upon it, and I'm kind of curious what your guys' thoughts are this. If they bring Chris Evans in here again as Captain America or a Captain America, do you think that undermines Sam Wilson's Captain America? Do you think that will hurt Anthony Mackie's Captain America? He's already shaking his head no.
I think so. I
awesome.
was listening to your Wednesday show. I think so.
Let's start with Ace, and then I want to hear from T. Why do you think so, Ace? Because you know where I stand on this. I think so too.
It's people are already iffy about him, and it's going to be a lot of political racism stuff in that movie anyway. You know what I'm saying? Like people don't want to touch on it, but that's what it's going to be. People like their Captain America a certain way. Not to mention Chris Evans was phenomenal in the role. It is really hard to same thing with Robert Downey Jr. and Hugh Jackman. You see them as his role. People see them as that. What I would have liked to see is, but they already touched base on a little bit in Infinity War, where he was the Nomad. You bring him back as a different variation of Captain America, the Nomad character. But they already did that. But if he comes back as Captain America, I think it's going to completely undermine what we see in Brave New World, which is kind of feeling like it's not going to be given a fair shake because people like their Captain America a certain way.
How about you, T?
I can completely agree with that. But full transparency, I don't think Anthony Mackie lasts after Secret Wars. I think the MCU itself is going to look drastically different after Secret Wars. You have to think he's getting up there in age. Everybody, like, these actors are getting older. Like they simply are. And these movies are pushing out further. Like the next Captain America movie probably wouldn't be to like 29, 30, which is insane to think about right now. The fact that we're talking about 2030 is insane. Like these movies, the Marvel the Marvel blueprint or the Marvel timeline or their way forward, they already have every movie, I think, in the 27, I think. So the next Captain America movie is not going to see the light of day until 28, 29, 30 time frame. By that time, Anthony Mackie's in his 50s, like mid to late 50s, maybe even like he's older. He's going to survive, but I think he passed down the mantle of Captain America. We're going to see a new Steve Rogers. Chris Evans can't do it forever. Like we're at some point, we're going to have to see new characters. Whether he's white or black, that's completely up in the air. But we're going to see either new Sam Wilson or new Steve Rogers sometime, after Secret Wars. Because, I mean, I don't want a 70-year-old. I don't want a 60-year-old because Chris Evans has to be in his mid 50s.
Yeah,
70-year-old Chris Evans will still be in better shape than all of us, though. So
touche. I respect that. Like,
and they'll save money on the de-aging for the old man Cap. They won't need it anymore.
Yeah, touche. I don't think it undermines it. Like, because like I said, I don't think the shelf life of this Cap is very low. Because I think this movie is gonna bomb. I think they're gonna backtrack on it, and it's for everything you said, Ace. It's not gonna be because it's a bad movie. Everybody keeps talking about these reshoots. I think they're reshooting because a certain population of audience is just saying that it's bad just to say it's bad. And I mean, we're going to get what we get in February. I'm going to go see it regardless.
Same.
I just don't think it's going to do well in the box office because of the political and racial overtones that come with having a black Captain America. The thing that nobody wants to say out loud, but it's being said out loud. You know,
Right.
And
your silence is loudly saying, you know, what your thoughts are on this. So, I mean, yeah, that's just my thought on it. I don't think it impedes it. Seeing Chris Evans pop in for a cameo isn't going to ruin Anthony Mackie's Captain America because I think, honestly, I think it's already ruined. Like, just
Mm,
because.
that's a shame.
I'll also add
It is.
the time too, man. Like you talking about political. Here in America, it's a difficult time. But this movie would have came out maybe a year or two ago. Maybe people are a little more open to it, but there's a lot of political stuff floating around here that it's going to add on to why this
Yeah.
movie's not going to be really given a chance.
Mhm.
Especially coming out in February after January. Like if this would have been pushed out like
Black
maybe
History
to the
Month.
summer.
It's hilarious.
Oh yeah, they're doing. I know why they're doing it. I know why they're doing it because it's Black History
Hilarious.
Month. Same thing with Black Panther, you know,
Yeah.
and Captain Marvel. You put it on International Women's Month. You know what I'm saying? But
Oh yeah.
I'm thinking of the inauguration stuff, January, right after February. If you would have pushed this maybe to the summertime, it could have been a little bit more time for people not to really think about it so much.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, bottom line is we got another OG from the MCU returning for Avengers Doomsday. I think we're right around the corner from hearing a Scarlett Johansson announcement as well. I think Black Widow's
For
coming
sure.
back.
For
100%.
sure. 100%. There's no way they do this movie with RDJ. Thor will be there. Cap will be. There's no way they do it without her. No
Yeah.
way.
I bet she'll be back. But what do you guys think of this? What do you guys think their plan is for Evans and Atwell? How do you think they're going to play into the overall story? With that, guys, we had a lot to talk about, and we talked about a lot. So we have reached the end of our show. Unfortunately, there's no time for comments or questions, but I want to thank Michael Entity, Luke Ponto, Nathan Zrana Movies, Jay Pylon, Tennis Reaper Cinema, Toxic Gamer, The Laser, and all of you guys for being here, and for our members, Ace and T, for being here and talking all this stuff with me as well. Please, again, tell people where they can find you. We'll start with you, Ace.
You can find me at the Ace Avenue, DAACE Avenue, for your sports, movies, and more. Hit that like and subscribe to yours truly. Thank you, Zach, once again for having me on. I didn't realize this was episode 53. Almost at 100.
We're getting up there. T, where can they find you?
Or you can find me at the Have You Seen That with T YouTube channel and Have You Seen That on Letterboxd. I do movie reviews and I need to start doing more.
Crossing my fingers for that Craven review.
Oh
Yeah,
man,
can't wait.
It's coming. Yeah. It'll come by the end of the weekend.
All right, and you guys can find me right here. There will be a Craven review. I've got some other videos I'm working on in the can that I'll be posting later on in January and February. And yeah, lots of stuff to still come on the channel. So stay tuned, stick around. And once again, thank you guys so much for joining us. And we'll see you guys again next time. Take care.